Right, my top 10 rock musicals. And in this, I'm not talking about things where you have like the Beatles in Hard Day's Night and Help, where they're playing themselves and it was only a film. It's much the same with Prince in Purple Rain and Slade in Flame. They're not actually playing themselves, but they're playing someone similar. I'm also not including jukebox musicals like Mamma Mia and biopic musicals like Jersey Boys. But my number 10 on the list is Hedwig and the Angry Inch. Now, I found this VHS in a library sale, and it was cheap, so I bought it out of curiosity. I think I sort of knew what it was about, and I thought it was going to be like a B film, like a John Waters type sensationalist thing, because just of the nature of the subject matter. But I enjoyed the outrageousness of it. And you do feel a bit guilty because it's quite serious. It's about a guy that transitioned in East Germany in order to marry an American GI and get out of East Germany. And the operation went a bit wrong, leaving him with an angry inch. And he goes to America, and through a series of mishaps perhaps, he becomes a singer. And I watched the I watched a theatre production of it, because since it came out it has actually become quite well known, and it has been on Broadway. But when the live production, Hedwig is like the lead singer of the band, and he has an assistant, and the band are the other characters basically. So it's basically a rock show with a monologue. And I don't know, it's possible that I am from an age when I can appreciate this. You know, obviously glam rock and the gender bending new romantics, and we could all walk on the wild side with Candy Darling, and the Kinks had Lola, and the Beatles sang Obla Dee Obla Da about gender changing market traders. We were okay with Adam and Steve, and not everybody approved, but the people who didn't approve tended to be the thugs and not the politicians. And when I looked into the Hedwig and the Angry Inch a bit closer, it turns out that the major song is called The Origin of Love. And this is a concept from the story, The Origin of Love, from Aristophanes' speech in Plato's Symposium. And it says that humans were once connected to one another, living as two-headed, four-armed, four-legged beings, until the angry gods split them down the centre, and that they spend their lives searching for their other half. And this is also where the word androgyny comes from. Number 9 is Grease. And I suppose this is a bit of a guilty pleasure. I saw the film when it came out. I wanted to go and see the Superman film. This was a sensation. You'll believe a man can fly. And a friend of mine wanted to see Grease again because he'd seen it loads of times. But he insisted he'd go with me to see Superman if we went to see Grease. And I actually really enjoyed Grease. Even though I was a bit sick of the songs I'd seen. They'd been in the charts. There was You're the One That I Want. That was in the charts for ages. And I've always thought it was quite questionable as to whether it was right that John Travolta turned the sweet innocent girl into a cigarette-smoking, leather-clad rocker. But Grease is totally unbelievable anyway. It was impossible to believe that Travolta and Olivia Newton-John were school kids. And people who criticised the ending, which I loved the ending, where they sing "We'll stay together" like "Ram-a-lam-a-lam-a-ding dong dong" and all that, and they go up in the sky in a car, and people say that spoils it, it stops it from being realistic, but it never was realistic. I remember walking down the street one day and I found the music, sheet music to some Grease songs, and I was playing in a band with a male and female singer, and I made them do "Summer Days, Summer Nights." They hated it, but I loved that song. I mean, I love key changes. Why would I not like that song? And there was the "Oh Sandy" song, and I was a bit sceptical that the song "Grease Lightning," you know, all these musicals tend to have something that's a bit like a 12-bar, but dressed in leather jackets and black t-shirts doing all this business, you know, "Oh Grease Lightning." I saw a production of Grease, I think it was the Dominion in Tottenham Court Road, and I'm fairly certain that Sandy was played by Samantha Janus, who became one of the Mitchell sisters in EastEnders, and the male lead was a guy out of Neighbours. Totally in a different direction. Number 8, I have The Wall. I was not a fan of The Wall when it came out. I had been a fan of Pink Floyd when they were avant-garde hippies making spacey noises. But The Wall, it just didn't appeal to me. Everybody was going on about Comfortably Numb, and I knew a whole load of hippies who'd sit around, and they seemed to believe that Comfortably Numb was glorifying their favourite state, that they desired to, you know, skin up and have a few J's and get comfortably numb. In the same way as they seem to misunderstand the Frank Zappa phrase, "You've got to get out of it if you want to get into it," or it's the other way round, but they somehow missed the irony. And the other thing is that there was that single that was at #1 with the school kids, and I hated it. I mean, I hated that clumsy, chunky funk thing that David Gilmour does. He does it in a lot of Pink Floyd songs. It's almost like when they run out of ideas, he suddenly gets this idea that he's Nile Rodgers, and he isn't. It wasn't until I saw the film, and the film is a bit of a harrowing experience. I think I've seen it twice, and I liked it for that reason. I liked the fact it made me feel something. The song "Mother" is great because it really brings the whole thing across. The scene in the playground with the young kid who wants to go off with the other kid's family, and they won't let him, and because, you know, Roger Waters' father died in the war, and it's very moving. I mean, it does annoy me because it was yet another instance where Roger Waters was going on about how hard it is being a rock star, but people like me who desperately wanted to be rock stars didn't really feel that sympathetic. And I could have been an extra in The Wall. That scene where they have the riots, they were recruiting around the pubs in Harrow, and I had some friends who were extras. I think they went along. But I couldn't see there was any credibility to be gained at the time by being in a Pink Floyd film, even if Bob Geldof was the lead character. So, yes, I counted The Wall because Roger Waters has performed. He has this extravaganza. He plays big stadiums and he performs the whole piece as a more or less theatrical event. Number 7, I have Return to the Forbidden Planet. Now, this is like somebody made a musical just for me. I mean, it's old rock and roll songs and songs from the 60s held together with with dialogue that's been stolen from famous bits of Shakespeare. It's based on a film, Return to the Forbidden Planet, an old science fiction film, which in itself was based on The Tempest. And it's just fun. I saw it at the Wickham Swan. I remember when it first came out, one of the things that they were selling it on is that the technology, the like vacuum packs and the ray guns and that, were made from domestic objects, and people would turn up with hoovers tied to their backs. And in the stage production, the band are all the characters, so you are watching live music, and they're acting and singing. It ended with a big rock and roll medley once they'd finished the actual plot. But when they escape from the planet, they sing, "We've got to get out into space," to the tune of "We've got to get out of this place." And the line that always I remember from it is, "Live long and prospero." Number 6, Hair, the musical. And I bought this album in the Florence Nightingale charity shop in Beaconsfield. And I have done a whole piece about Hair. And the thing about Hair is it was when I was, well, whatever time it came out, I think it came out 68, 69. And the songs were on the radio. And we would hear The Age of Aquarius and Let the Sun Shine In. The most famous version of that was by The Fifth Dimension. And the song Good Morning Starshine got a lot of radio play. So the album there was the Hare Krishna song, a few things that were quite well known, and there was the songs that Nina Simone put together, the song about I ain't got and I got. Got my hand, got my head, got my whatever. And these were all quite popular. So unlike a lot of rock musicals where you maybe hear one song, this one there were quite a few. And listening to it now, it's probably more edgy than you'd get away with. There's a song that lists sexual practices. There's songs that list narcotics. They like to list songs. There's songs that list abbreviations like LBJ and CIA. And there's songs that describe how sad it is that they're going to be losing beautiful young men in war. But the thing that made me come back to it was when I realised there's a song based on Shakespeare's a speech from Hamlet. My favourite speech from Hamlet is the one that starts, I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth. And it starts with the line, what a piece of work is a man, and they sing the what a piece of work is a man speech. And I had to have a copy of that. And I watched the Norman Jewison musical, and of course it ends up with the one of them stands in for another, and ends up going to Vietnam and dying, and it's a bit taken from Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. So it does have certain literary credibility. A lot of it doesn't stand up, especially if you see the film. The hippies just seem to be a bit insufferable. They're just winding people up for the sake of it. Number 5, I have 200 Motels by Frank Zappa. Now this is, by anybody's standards, weird. Even by Frank Zappa's standards. A friend of mine had the album 200 Motels. It was a double album. And at the time, I really didn't get into his modern classical music. And there are bits which are very operatic. And so a lot of people think that it, at the time, thought it was a work of genius. It's rather like I struggled with Uncle Meat when I first heard it. Because I wanted to hear the satirical pop songs. 200 Motels has Flo and Eddie on it, and I wanted to hear this, like the material that they were doing at the Fillmore East and we're only in it for the money. But listening to it now, I actually like it a lot more. It does, but it doesn't make any sense. What he did was, the script was based on, he secretly recorded the members of the band, and then he transcribed what they said and gave it back to them as the script. And in the script, it has bits where the band say that Frank's recording them and using it for a script. And Frank Zappa is played by Ringo Starr, so this doesn't my rule that it's not the people playing themselves. It's not called Frank Zappa, it's called Larry the Dwarf, and he's played by Ringo Starr. And apparently they ran out of money, so they couldn't finish the story, whatever the story is. So some of it is a cartoon. But a lot of it was recorded on a soundstage live with an orchestra. So rock band and orchestra. Sort of a bit like the Deep Purple thing, only much weirder. And the reason I've included it, because there was no live performance of it, but there should have been. It was booked to be performed at the Royal Albert Hall, but the Royal Albert Hall found out, somebody showed them the lyrics. I think the song Penis Dimension caused a lot of trouble, and the Royal Albert Hall cancelled them. And this was on all the news programmes. I'm not sure I was that familiar with Frank Zappa at the time, but I can remember, like 6 o'clock news, there was the Mothers of Invention standing outside the Royal Albert Hall. There was a reporter reporting on it, and the Mothers of Invention were promoting their latest album on television, which was, well, that was well done, I think. Number 4 is the Blues Brothers, of course, it has to be there, the Blues Brothers. I just love this music, I just love that soul music. I love the fact it's got the guys from Booker T and the MGs in it. It's got Aretha Franklin and she dressed as a waitress singing Think. It's got Ray Charles. There's even a joke where Ray Charles takes out a gun and shoots something, and there's lots of dancing in the street. There's a bit where they drive away in the police car, and on the soundtrack they're playing Soothe Me by Sam and Dave, and I had to go and buy a Sam and Dave compilation just so I could have Soothe Me. And of course it has the greatest car chase ever, and it has these quotable lines, and the suits, the sunglasses, the police car, it's got everything. So how could I not have the Blues Brothers? I can't remember when I first saw it, but I know this was before you could streaming. I know I took a friend of mine, we actually went to one of these late night showings at a art cinema in Hampstead Heath, I think, just to watch the Blues Brothers, and it was on after something like Animal House, so I had to wait till about 2 in the morning to see it. But that's how much I loved this film, that I would go to Hampstead and wait till 2 o'clock in the morning to see it. Number 3 is Rent, and I have the CD of the film soundtrack, and I have a live DVD of the Broadway production. And I'm pretty certain I got the live DVD of the Broadway production in Save the Children in Aylesbury. It's fallen on the floor, of course it has. It doesn't happen to other people on YouTube. They have it better organised. So Rent is a big part of my musical journey, because around the time that Rent was playing at the Shaftesbury Theatre in the West End, I was working with a couple of other people on a musical that the producers of the Shaftesbury Theatre were interested in putting on. So I actually got to see Rent free, see the musical free, and with my friends. And the producer, a guy who had worked with Andrew Lloyd Webber, came and showed us to our seats, told us that they hoped that they could get our musical on at the Shaftesbury Theatre after Rent had finished. And we watched the first half, and at the end of the first half I was a bit underwhelmed. I mean, I didn't want it to be brilliant, but the song Seasons of Love had quite... I remembered that. That was the one just before the break, and we went outside and talked about Seasons of Love. But the second half, I was blown away by the second half. I mean, I think the thing that had annoyed me was it has all this sort of recitative type thing going on where they're talking, the guy's talking to his mother on the phone, and it's a bit contrived. You've got this guy who's continually trying to write Musetta's waltz, and so the first half just did seem to be a bit contrived. But the second half, where one of the characters dies of AIDS, and the whole thing is about some young people in the AIDS epidemic, and it's based on the plot of La Boheme, and there's even a scene with a candle that goes out. Only, of course, in red, so the candle was for doing things that drug addicts do with candles. And there is they copied the scene, the La Vie Bohème, from La Bohème, where they're all having a meal and Musetta gets up and dances on the table and stuff like that. So, yes, I'm a big fan of La Bohème and Puccini, so that appealed to me. But I think what got me most is the song No Day But Today. And, you know, it's pertinent to everyone, but particularly pertinent if you're living in an AIDS epidemic. And, you know, we've all lived through something recently. I'm getting teared up talking about it. Not that COVID is anything like AIDS, but made me think. So number 2, this is on a totally different tack, is the Rocky Horror Show. Now, I saw the Rocky Horror Show when it first started. It started in the theatre at the top of the King's Road, and then it moved to a cinema halfway down the King's Road, and I saw it there. And I don't think I was expecting much. It was just another sort of the kind of thing it was. It's sort of this. It sort of like was out of date because it sort of was a bit glammy. Because glam was a reflection of, it was an early 70s reflection of the music of the late 50s. And I was seeing it in the late 70s. It just didn't seem to have any relevance. It would seem to be out of step with punk and new wave that were happening at the time. And it basically being a pastiche of cheap horror films, and but when we got there, on our seats we found a sheet of paper with the instructions to the time warp, and I should have kept that because I do a lot of performances and with my band or solo, and I tend to do the time warp. And people dance. It's the one thing. If everything's going badly, I'll do the time warp and I'll go down well. So when the movie came out, I saw the movie on TV a number of times. I used to have to go and deliver to Bray Studios. I used to drive past the hotel, which was the Frankenstein place. And what can I say about the movie? Susan Sarandon in her underwear, Tim Curry, and Meatloaf. And now that I'm seeing it not in a theatre with people, actors running up and down the aisles and all the kind of mad stuff going on, but when I watch the film, I actually find it quite moving. The bit where he sings about he's going home, and the way he's sort of betrayed. And I don't know if anybody else has recognised that it's about a guy who becomes a total megalomaniac, and it has to be put down by the people who are really in charge. So that's just a thought I've just had. I wonder why I'm thinking that at the moment. But at the end of the day, the thing you should come away from having watched Rocky Horror is don't dream it, be it. And that might include doing somebody that does stuff on YouTube. So my number one was, it was always going to be this, wasn't it? It's Tommy. Tommy was the film. I've got the soundtrack to the film. I've got the DVD of the film. I've got the Who's original recording. Now, I think I first encountered anything to do with Tommy. Obviously I knew Pinball Wizard, and a friend of mine lent me the Woodstock album, and that's got See Me, Feel Me, Listening to You, which is an incredibly moving piece of music, I think. It's standing up on its own. I mean, people forget, but it did, was part of a medley that the New Seekers had a hit with, along with Pinball Wizard. It's just the way that it builds, and when you see the Who playing it at the film of Isle of Wight, and it just builds and gets more and more intense. And I've seen them do it live, and they put the big, they were lights they'd got of an airport runway, landing lights that go behind the band, and they just blind you. And that big moment of listening to you moment, and it's a sensory overload. The first time I sort of heard the whole musical was a friend of mine had the orchestral version that was brought out. Yeah, there was like the LSO, someone like that. Then I got, my parents gave me the Tommy album one year for Christmas. And the song, probably one of the most moving songs on Tommy, is the song Christmas. So on Christmas Day I'm sitting there listening to Tommy doesn't know what day it is. He doesn't know what Jesus is or what praying is. And it's, I don't know, you can pick all kinds of holes in it. It doesn't really stand up. Yeah, it starts in the First World War, and yet clearly towards the end it's sort of the 50s and 60s. And but it was quite a moving experience. There were songs in it where you do feel really sorry for the kid. And of course there's the bit at the end where he becomes a messiah and the crowd revolts. And once again, I'm hoping that this resonates with what we're seeing at the moment, because they say we're not going to put a cork in our mouths and plugs in our ears just to copy it. And I saw the film when it came out, and you know, I actually do like Ken Russell, and I did like the beans coming out of the TV, and Tina Turner with the snake, and all the madness in the film. And I've watched that several times. I've got the DVD. It was also a West End. It was on in the West End, and it is my number one rock musical. Tommy by The Who.